Today we're diving into Resident Evil Code Veronica, first released for the Sega Dreamcast in the year 2000. Now I class myself as a hardcore Resident Evil fan, having played all the numbered entries and a number of the side ones, but until recently I'd never played Code Veronica. This review will be my experience playing the game for the first time, and if it holds up in 2020, having never experienced it before. If you're looking for in-depth knowledge on the game, this probably isn't the discussion for you. However, if you stick around, I'm sure you'll enjoy the points I have to make, and I'll let it be known that I'll be going into partial spoilers on this. I played it on the PS4 under the release of Code Veronica X, and I'll break this review down as we go, covering off the presentation, plot, gameplay, and then finally giving a little summary on my overall thoughts. Let's dive in. Booting this game really took me back to my childhood, and left me grinning ear to ear. The menu sounds alone gave me a wash of nostalgia, from the familiar bleeps to the classic
Resident Evil.
The game has been up-res from its original release, which makes it quite appealing to the eye. However, they didn't decide to include the FMVs into this, which makes this huge contrast between gameplay and FMV, and really brings down the presentation, showing that Capcom really didn't give much love to this remaster. The frame rate for the PAL version, which I unfortunately experienced, is stuck at 25 FPS, which is a shame, but it didn't hamper the experience for me. Music-wise, this game is phenomenal. The soundtrack creates a real sense of dread, and the save room theme, just like its predecessors before it, is standout. The creatures and guns all have a great sound palette, and it seems as if the sound effects have been carried straight over from the earlier entries, again adding to my sense of nostalgia. Unfortunately, those praises are where it ends because the voice acting is beyond ridiculous. Resident Evil 1 to 3 showed huge steps forward when it came to its voice cast. They were cheesy, yeah, but comparing Resident Evil 1 to 3, you can see how much further they had progressed with it. Now with Code Veronica, it's like as if they picked up actors from the street and said, you know what guys, you got one take, have at it.
Have it your way then. You're just a rat in a cage anyway. I'll be sure to keep you entertained before I dispose of you.
This had the unintentional consequence of turning this game into the funniest game I've ever experienced in my life. Every cutscene, I was howling with laughter, and no one escapes from this. There are some characters who are considerably worse than others, but no one delivers even a moderately decent performance. I know that Resi has never experienced great performances, at this time especially, but this is a considerable downgrade from Resi 2 and 3, taking it back to Resident Evil 1 levels of bad. Steve Burnside is easily the worst offender here, and I can't believe that one team member working on the game didn't take a step back and say, hold on guys, something here ain't right.
What's wrong, Steve? Shoot him!
Wait! I can't! No!
Steve!
No!
Ah! Steve.
Father. Father. Father.
The story begins with Claire Redfield, hot off Resident Evil 2, getting captured looking for her brother Chris in an Umbrella research base in Paris before being carted off to jail on a remote Umbrella testing base. Things go badly and she needs to escape. The story is simple and the files you find over the course of the game tie it in really well to the wider lore and expand upon the different factions within Umbrella. The cast of characters you meet are, well, as mentioned already, voiced horribly. However, they are memorable, albeit not always for the right reasons. Steve Burnside and the Ashford twins don't hold up today. Steve is an absolute pervert and sounds like a douche. Alfred Ashford comes off as the world's biggest cuck. But the game does a good job in its telling of the story, as cheesy as it is. If there's any game that deserves a full remake, it's this one. There's a lot here that, if painted with a serious brush, could come off as truly spectacular. It's just a shame that, with what we're given, the antagonists never feel threatening, and Steve, in particular, is super annoying. Code Veronica is the successor to Resident Evil 3, releasing a year later, and with this entry, they really perfected the survival horror gameplay that made the original trilogy so memorable. Using the power of the Dreamcast, they were able to move away from the static 2D backgrounds that defined the earlier entries, and for the first time, were able to have the environment fully rendered in 3D. This does have the unfortunate side effect that in remastering the game, the high rendered backgrounds of the original trilogy still stand up today, whereas the whole game now does look dated. But at the time, I can imagine this was a big leap. The fixed camera angles return, but now they're dynamic and can move slightly from their fixed perspectives, tracking the player character, making the game feel more fluid. This is something I wish Resident Evil would return to, as this style holds up impressively well today, really adding suspense to new areas. Hearing the sound of a moaning zombie, but not being able to see them on screen makes for some intense sections, and opening doors is the same as the original trilogy. This also is something I didn't realise I missed. Having a quiet few seconds before the next area loaded, with Claire's heartbeat echoing through the headphones while the door slowly creaks open, made me feel uneasy in the best way possible for survival horror. Modern games rely mostly on jump scares, where classic RE left a feeling of dread, which is difficult now to replicate with over-the-shoulder cameras and seamless area transitions. The fear of the unknown is such a palpable thing, and it succeeds immensely here. The classic formula of item management, puzzles, and planning the best route to your goal all return here. There's nothing quite like organising your item box and learning which enemies you can avoid and which you have to take down to make your return visits to the save room and puzzles an easier time. Resident Evil moved away from this formula with Resident Evil 4 onwards, and I'm struggling to understand why. Sure, Resi 4 revolutionised the series and changing the gaming landscape, influencing titles even still to this day, but Code Veronica stands tall as a series high point for me in the way it brought all of its core ideas and tweaked them to the point where horror was the key factor, something I'd argue the series lost with Resi 4. It would be remiss of me to not mention tank controls here. They are divisive, and I know a lot of reviewers at the time were quick to point the finger at Resi 3 and Veronica for not modernising their schemes, but in hindsight, where the series moved to with 4, 5 and then later 6, I was so glad to be back to these controls again. Code Veronica handles just like Resi 3, albeit with one noticeable improvement. A tap of L1 causes Claire to aim at an enemy. This means that during a camera angle, when an enemy is obscured, you no longer have to wait for them to shuffle into view, and instead can unload at them off screen, knowing you aren't wasting precious ammo. This is a great feature, and I wish they would enable the option for this style of gameplay again, especially with the recent remasters of 2 or 3. The core of Resident Evil games are item management and finding objects around the map to progress. One critique with Code Veronica is I'd find objects so early before knowing where I had to go next. This often meant I was often reaching the next roadblock with all the items already in hand, whereas in Resi 1 to 3, it was more often you'd encounter the roadblock and then go through an area to find what you're missing. This felt annoying at times as I was often lugging items back and forth to the item box, not knowing why I needed to carry them all, until I encountered the roadblock, and then had to go all the way back to recollect them from the box. It just felt unorganised in this way, and I'd often say to myself, if I was in the game, and I spotted a dragonfly wing, would I pick this up? Why would I bother? Why would I bother and carry it if I didn't know I needed to attach it to something later? It's a small nitpick, but it was still annoying, and it didn't have the same flow as 1 and 2 in particular. The game is split between playing as Claire and then Chris at the midway point. I have one major gripe with the game that I feel is inexcusable. The game swaps between the protagonists seemingly randomly, with no warning, whichever items or weapons that are equipped on one are not accessible with the other. This is the worst mechanic I've ever experienced in a game. It nearly left me unable to complete the game and would have caused me a full hard restart. Deep in the game, on the final section, you control Claire for a brief few minutes, and I thought this must be the end, so I loaded her up with all my best gear I'd saved for the entire game. assault rifle, grenade launcher, magnum, bolt gun with explosive rounds, ready to fight the final boss, only for it to swap back to Chris, who at this point only had a shotgun, knife and a handgun to deal with the final boss. I play Resident Evil games extremely carefully, and had saved all my best stuff for this boss fight, which then became impossible for me to access. Fortunately, playing as thrifty as I did, I had 30 plus shotty rounds left to deal with her, but this felt like a real kick in the teeth and made me irrationally angry. I always end up finishing Resi games with far more than I need due to how careful I am, but this was beyond a joke. A simple transfer system would have solved this problem and wouldn't take any of the tactical choices out of the game. PS2 and Dreamcast games were capable of a lot more than this at the time. I don't think it's a valid excuse to use its age as a crutch. This was an oversight that could have caused me to replay the entire game had I not been so frugal. So overall, my experience of Code Veronica has been an interesting dose of nostalgia sprinkled with dread and unintended hilarity. A full remake of this game would be incredible, as I feel it falls short of the original 3 games with its cast of characters. With a different tone, it could really elevate it to the next level. Now this has been my experience with the game. If you're new to the channel and enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and sub for more reviews, clip compilations and skits. And also feel free to check out my Twitter, at SSJDavy, where I put up polls for the next game I'm reviewing. So thank you to everyone that voted for this game. I'll see you all on the next one. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.